Hello and welcome back to the channel. First video of 2023. Very cool. Bit of a break since the end of year stuff because I've been ill and moving. But we're back. Gonna try and put to bed the favorite album series early this year. Of course, left myself with 4 episodes left. And as you will know, if you've been watching along, we're into 10 out of 10 territory now. The best of the best, which all of these albums are already that made my list, but this is a whole different tier. And yeah, if you haven't watched any of these videos before, recommend you go back and watch them from the start. There'll be a playlist on the channel somewhere, a public playlist where you can watch them all in order, the countdown. It'll be interesting to see if anybody has any thoughts on any of these, because I already know that some people have had some thoughts. So without further ado, my number 40, to stir up even more controversy, is going to be Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. That's right. An album that came out in 2020 is making my top 40 albums of all time. How could that be possible? So I've only really been into following music for the past six years or so, around that time. And following new music was something that I didn't really start doing until COVID hit in March of 2020. I think we were all looking for something to do, and new album releases, films weren't coming out as much, obviously. So I kind of tried to find some new stuff that intrigued me, and I listened to Phoebe Bridgers' debut album. It's brilliant, but this is the one for me. I was so excited for it. I loved the singles, and then the album came and it was everything I wanted it to be. It's got such a great atmosphere. The songwriting is so beautiful. It's full of memorable songs. I've played it front to back so many times, and I will. I'm not as in, I don't listen to her as much as I used to. But that doesn't take away from how important this album is to me, not just on an emotional level, but also, in getting me into new music and following new music, because this was one of the first new releases that I was like really excited for. So yeah, Punisher is my number 40. 39, an artist I have talked about on the channel. We had Vanessa on to talk about Wilco, and my number 39 favorite album of all time is Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which you will remember was my second favorite Wilco album. So stay tuned. Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, what can I say? It's a classic for a reason. Jesus Etc. was the first Wilco song I ever heard, and it was love at first listen. I played it over and over and over and over again. But it's also got a load of other great songs like Heavy Metal Drummer, I'm Trying to Break Your Heart, Pot Kettle Black. So many great songs. And yeah, I still love it to this day. I think it's one of the staples of indie rock. 38, bit of a curveball maybe, unless you know my tastes. It's going to be Homogenic by Björk. Really, really amazing album. At the time, it was one of the weirdest things that I liked, if that makes sense. It's what I didn't know then, obviously, was that compared to what she would go on to do, it's fairly accessible. It's got the really memorable songs, really great production. Sort of the big string orchestras on top of the electronic beats was quite a revolutionary thing for me to hear at the time. And again, similar to Punisher, a very important album for me and my musical discovery. It's not going to be for everyone, and I'm not going to act like it's the craziest thing in the world, but in terms of like the threshold of the amount of experimentation that I can handle, it's like pushing the boundaries a little bit, which it has the first 2 tracks, Hunter and Yoga, are probably my favorites. Yoga especially, one of my favorite songs of all time. Also Bachelorette is beautiful as well. So 37 is my favorite hip hop album of all time, and my only 10 out of 10 rap album. I definitely am not as well versed in the genre as some people are, but as a few albums have shown up, as you can see from quite basic artists. My number 37 favorite album of all time is "We Got It From Here." Thank You for Your Service by A Tribe Called Quest. It's just sort of like a collection of the old and the new in the hip hop world in terms of the people featured on the album, from Andre 3000 to Kendrick Lamar. So many great features and so many great songs. The production is flawless. Yeah, it's just one of those where everybody should hear it at least once. It is a modern classic and one of the best albums of the 2010s for sure. My number 36 is going to be Abattoir Blues, Stroke the Lyre of Orpheus by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. This is my favorite Nick Cave album. I do love Nick Cave. And I think this is sort of the summation of everything I do love about Nick Cave. You have sort of the tender ballads on here. You have the sort of the more rocking out moments. You have some like the track like Breathless, which is unlike anything else that I'd heard him do. But yeah, I think if as a Nick Cave fan, is also, I would say, like a bit more accessible than a lot of his work. If you're a fan of alternative rock, you're probably going to love this album. It's a double album, but I don't think like it's one of the few double albums where there's only like one track that I would want to cut, which is Fable the Brown Ape, which is not a bad song, but compared to the rest of the album, it doesn't really hold up. And it's full of loads of my favorite Nick Cave songs. I mentioned Breathless, Oh Children, There She Goes My Beautiful World, Nature Boy, Get Ready for Love, Cannibal's Hymn, Abattoir Blues, the title track. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And recommendation for pretty much anybody who likes that sort of alternative rock of the sort of in the style of the 90s, but released in 2004. Speaking of the 90s, my number 35 is When the Pawn, etc. by Fiona Apple. Brilliant singer-songwriter, brilliant production from John Bryan. The drum sound on this album is fantastic. The snare has such a bite to it. And then the songwriting is easily the best she ever did. I mean, I like Fiona Apple a lot. I like Fetch the Bolt Cutters. That's a good album. And Tidal's pretty good. And Idler Wheel. But none of them really come anywhere near this one for me. I think this is like head and shoulders, maybe an entire body above those albums. It has Paper Bag and Limp, which are probably my two favorite Fiona Apple songs. But also songs like Get Gone and Fast As You Can. Just so good. And again, if you're a fan of sort of piano singer-songwriter, this is an essential album if you haven't heard it. I'm sure a lot of people already have because she's a much talked about artist. But I think it is one of the greats of that genre. Number 34, we're hitting up a lot of my favorite artists and my favorite albums from them. It's Bob Dylan with Blonde on Blonde, which is my favorite Bob Dylan album. Again, double album, a big sort of. I wasn't quite into this album when I first got into Bob. I was firstly into, Freewheeling was actually my first Bob Dylan album that I got really into, and then it was Highway 61, and then sort of got Blonde on Blonde, which what an album. It has loads of classic Dylan tracks. It's like a run of 4 straight songs. It's like Visions of Joanna, One of Us Must Know, I Want You, and Stuck Inside a Mobile. I might have got the order wrong, but they're all 10 out of 10 songs for me. Also has Fourth Time Around, the sort of the petty dig at John Lennon, which is pretty hilarious. Just his best lyrics, I think, are on this album, apart from maybe Blood on the Tracks. But in terms of that, does the sort of emotional side of his lyrics better. I think this album does the sort of the mysticism and the open to interpretation of his lyrics better. And the band backing him up are always fantastic, especially on a track like One of Us Must Know. Just an electric performance all around, every instrument played to perfection. And again, it's a double album, but it doesn't really feel that long. Ends with Sad Eyed Lady, The Lowlands, which is another absolute classic. Yeah, can't say enough nice things about Blonde on Blonde. Wish I could put it higher, but unfortunately, I like a lot of albums, so 34 is where it lands. 33, another discography we did. This one was with Sam, and I've talked about this album at length. It was my favorite from this band, and it is Violator by Depeche Mode. Um, Perfect pop album, in my opinion. There's 9 tracks, and I think every single one of them are crafted perfectly. Every ounce of sort of melodicism and atmosphere is sort of stretched out of them. They're all sort of the perfect length, I think. Obviously, Enjoy the Silence is the big one that stands out. World in My Eyes is beautiful as well. Halo, I love. Blue Dress is very, very good as well. Yeah, around the time we were preparing for the Depeche Mode video, I found myself sort of having binge phases with each track from the album. So obviously initially it was like Enjoy the Silence and Personal Jesus and Policy of Truth, and then I had a really big phase with Blue Dress, and I had a big phase with World in My Eyes, then I had a big phase with Sweetest Perfection, and before I knew it, I'd sort of binge listened to the entire album, sort of in my own time. So yeah, one of the greatest pop albums, not just of the 90s, but of all time, Violator by Depeche Mode, which I now own on vinyl, which is pretty cool. 32 is Setting Suns by The Jam. I mean, I know this album has some critical acclaim, but I feel like I like this album more than most people I've spoken to about it. It's a very short album, 33 minutes or so, 10 tracks. Opens with Girl on the Phone, which is just one of the catchiest songs you are ever going to hear in your life. If that isn't stuck in your head after a listen or two, then I don't know if your ears are working properly. It has the cover of Heatwave as the closer, which a lot of people kind of drag, but I think it's so fun. They give it so much energy and so much power. And whenever that song comes on, it gives me a massive smile on my face. Eating Rifles, of course, is fantastic. I think Little Boy Soldiers is a masterpiece. The only way you could improve this album is if you just put Going Underground and Strange Town, Butterfly Collector on the album, and then it's probably even higher on my list. But I still think it's perfect, and yeah, I just love it to bits. I always will. And number 31, another album I've talked about before, not on a discography video, but on the 1972 video. It's my number 2 album of 1972. It was Close to the Edge by Yes, in my opinion, the greatest prog rock album of all time. We're really in the heavy hits now. I actually, while I was in the car on the way here, I listened to this album in its entirety. And considering it's like 3 songs, 18 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, they fly by. They really do. Close to the Edge is this sort of masterpiece of catharsis and just like melody, and the jamming is superb. And You and I is this really sweet love song that is sort of stretched out into multiple parts, which is great. And then Siberian Cartru is one that I kind of slept on for a little while, but it is so cool. The opening guitar riff is, you know what you're in for as soon as you hear that. And yeah, it's so fun. So you get everything you could really want in a prog album. You get the technical playing. It has a lot more emotion, I would say, than a lot of prog albums. It doesn't feel as sort of like, it feels a lot more personal in the songwriting, which I like. And John Anderson's vocal is just, like, come on, it's incredible. So there you have it, 4331, and that means 3 installments remaining. I'd be interested to see if people want to put some predictions down in the comments of what they think is going to show up. Yeah, into artists or albums, and yeah, look forward to seeing what you have to say. Next video is going to be favorite albums of 2022. Rob is going to join me for that one. Rob from the 1965 albums of the year video, the failed series, but we're going to be recording that tomorrow, I think, or Monday, and so it should be out Tuesday or Wednesday. It's a bit late, but you know, we had things going on, and we wanted to make sure our lists were ready and that we had gotten all our notes down. So thanks for the patience, and here's to another year of Williams Schmilliams.